Hello everyone, I'm Shannon Turner and I am going to be presenting on how to build dashboards. This was a presentation that I gave at ClientCon 2019. If you're new to creating reports generally, I would recommend first watching the video on how to create reports with the query builder, because dashboards are reports that will allow you to pull in information from other reports. We're going to get to that in just a minute. So before we talk about dashboards specifically, let's talk really super quickly about reports. Here I have a report that's going to give me the top 20 sources of actions over the last week. So it's a way of answering the question of where have my actions been coming from? And you can see that this report has been created with the query builder. If you prefer, you can write SQL code to create your reports instead. Or you can use the query builder as a starting point and then write your custom SQL. Whether you use the query builder or you write your own SQL, here's the results that we're going to get for running this report. We get a nice table that tells me where my actions are coming from. This is good, but what if I wanted to combine this with another report and have multiple reports on one single page? Query reports get data from the database and they give you a table of results like we saw in the last slide. Dashboards can take data from one or more of those reports and display them however you like using HTML. You don't need to know a ton of HTML in order to use dashboards, but if you do know a little bit of HTML, it'll certainly help. Let's take a look at this dashboard, the daily overview dashboard. And we can see that there's lots of tables of results in this dashboard, so this must be pulling data from multiple reports. Let's take a look at the code that makes up this dashboard, because I think this is one of the best ways to learn how to do this. Look at how it's being done with built-in reports. So looking at a portion of the HTML that makes up this dashboard, we can see that we have a header that says mailed, followed by a snippet that will run the report called overview_mailed. Then there's a header called mailings and a snippet that runs a report overview_mailing stats. And finally, there's a header for actions and a snippet that runs a report overview_actions. And you can see how this HTML code and the snippets for the reports work together to build out the report itself. So let's make a dashboard of our own. From the Reports tab, let's click Add Dashboard in the right-hand sidebar. Now let's create a name and a short name and a description just like we would for any other report. Here I've named my report Shannon Test Dashboard, since that's what I'm going to be using it for, just testing things out, seeing if they work. And I'm going to put a note about it being my first dashboard and that I'm testing things. That way other staff members know not to rely on it. Next, we're going to add in some HTML code. Don't be intimidated if you haven't written HTML before, because we're going to try to keep this portion as uncomplicated as possible and provide lots of examples. If we do this HTML code, and you can pause if you need to copy all of this down, what this dashboard will do is use the results of queries called all mailings sent today and top pages last week and incorporate that into our dashboard. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're doing this, the structure and syntax is extremely important. So if you make a typo, then you might get an error. So be very careful and exact when you're typing this out. Now, the code that actually inserts the report results is this set of curly brackets with reports.report_short name. So this will include report results in your dashboard. And if you wanted to, for example, include results from the report all mailings sent today, then you'd use this snippet, reports.all mailings sent today. And you can't use spaces in the names of your reports, so that's why there are underscores here. We're using the short name of a report. This slide might be looking familiar, and that's because I've duplicated it for emphasis. We have 3 sections. We have a heading for My First Dashboard. We have another heading for Today's Sent Mailings, followed by a report called All Mailings Sent Today. And then we have another heading, Top Pages in the Last Week, followed by that report. So this is the code, and when we run it, here are all our results. This is my results in my test action kit. Your results, of course, are going to look very different, and that's great. But you can see that we have, here's the mailing that I sent today, and here were the pages with the most actions in the last week, just like we put in our dashboard. Some reports need more information from you in order to run. That's great because that means that those reports are reusable. You can reuse them again and again, getting different results each time based on what you choose and select. So when I try to run this report, the page source info report, it asks for a page and what page type it is in order to display the results. It's asking, which page do you want to see the results for? So before I run this report, I need to enter in my page, and I need to enter in what type of page it is. It's a petition, and I want to see this page. After I've done that, you can see that it runs normally and displays the results. So even though this report requires more information to continue, you can still include it in your dashboard. But the dashboard pauses for your input before running to say, hey, Shannon, I can show you the results of this report, but I'm going to need some more information, like what page do you want to see? Sometimes, though, you might not want to pause for user input. When a report requires more information in order to run and you don't want to prompt the user for input, then the snippet to include it in the dashboard is a little bit different. You can see in this example, I have my report's short name, as we've seen in the previous slides, and we have value 1 as param1, value 2 as param2, parameter 2. What does that mean exactly? Let's bust up that jargon. Param1, value 1, param2, value 2, that's pretty abstract. Let's make it more concrete. So the report page source info was asking for the page type and which page. So those are the parameters that it's asking for. The values that we give it are the specific page and its type. So in my example, I want to see the results for page ID 17, which is a petition page. And just like with before, if you're doing snippets of code, the code has to be very precise, and if you make a typo, then you might get an error. So make sure that you're copying it down very exactly, because when you're doing coding, it can be very picky about those sorts of things. So to recap, there are, 2 ways of including reports in your dashboard. Generally you'll use this first way, especially if your report doesn't ask for more information, like which page do you want to see before running. If the report does need more information before it can run, then the dashboard will pause for more input before running. But if you have a dashboard where you're always going to use the same values for your parameters, like a dashboard that looks at data over the last week, or a dashboard that pulls data about pages with certain tags, in that case you might use the second version, though I do want to say it's a little less common. Adding this report will mean that our dashboard asks, which page did you want to see the results for before it runs? So let's try this out. And this would be a good time to, pause the video, try this out on your own, and see what results you get. Throughout this video, we're going to have lots of little pauses so that you can try it out and see what works. If you get an error or you get results that you don't quite expect, make sure that you're copying the code exactly, very precisely, you don't have any typos, because otherwise you might get an error. So go ahead and pause the video and I will be here when you are ready. Next, let's add another report to our dashboard. In this case, we're going to add donors in the last 60 days. Adding this report is a little different because even though the engagement donors query can show you people who have donated recently by any number of days that you specify, here we're saying in this specific dashboard, in my Shannon test dashboard, I always want to see who is given in the last 60 days. So go ahead and pause the video and try this out on your own. Another way to prompt for more information before running a dashboard is to use the required parameter tag. This is a little less common, but it does allow you to do some neat tricks that I'll show you on the next slide. So required parameter can also be used with a series of attributes that you can add, like for instance a label that maybe is easier to read than since, right? Since is the name of the variable, but join date maybe makes a little more sense, is easier to read. You can also say which type of information you're trying to collect. Like here, for example, we're asking for the date, and that will, if you specify the date as the type, then that gives you a nice little calendar widget here. You can also even set a default if you'd like. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't typically memorize page IDs. So to me, these autocomplete boxes are so useful when you're running reports. So if you use certain parameter names, then you will get an autocomplete box. For instance, page ID or mailing ID. But there's really lots of different parameters that you can use depending on the type of information that you're including in your report. A couple of really helpful hints, things to keep in mind. Make sure that you're testing your reports, that those reports themselves actually run before you include them in your dashboard. Because if the reports don't run on their own, they're not going to run in your dashboard either. Also make sure that you're testing one change at a time when you're building your dashboard, because report failed is the error that you get in your dashboard, and that can be really difficult to troubleshoot if you've added a ton of reports all at once. And another great thing is that dashboard templates can include JavaScript, which is run when the report is displayed. And the thing that will become important later on, it's not necessary if you're like, I don't use JavaScript, I've never written any JavaScript code, that's fine, you don't need to. But if you wanted to, then just know that it's available to use, and I'll show you some tricks that you can use with JavaScript code later on. So you probably won't have this report, actions in interval, in your action kit. This is in the ClientCon instance from 2019, but for instance, if you did have a login, if you came to ClientCon 2019 and you have a login, and if you were to run this in your dashboard, then you'd get an error that wasn't super clear as to what's going on. It just says report failed. Maybe as you're going along and creating your own dashboards, you might get this as well. So let's take a look and see how we might fix this. Now, what's actually happening is if we look at the report query actions in interval, it actually needs more information to run, and we didn't specify the start date or the days. I know this can be a little bit confusing, so this slide can help. There are two different code snippets that you can use when running reports in your dashboard. This first one up top, this fails because it needs more information, or maybe because the report itself failed to run. but the one on the bottom succeeds because it pauses to ask for more information. So if you do get an error, just remember that there are two different ways of including a report snippet, and come back to this, refer to this slide. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, but that is the nature of coding. There's still a way, though, that we can make this first snippet work. If we look at the SQL code for this query report, we can see that there are two parameters it wants more information about before it can run. It says, Shannon, what date should I start looking at actions, which is the start date, and how many days after that, which is the days parameter. So if we add those in to our snippet, remember that other format or that other syntax of that snippet that we saw before. Remember, this is the one that's a little less common, but when I was creating lots of dashboards, I ran into this problem a lot, and so I wanted to at least bring this up so that if you bump into this problem, you'll know exactly what to do. So here I'm adding those parameters into my snippet. I'm saying with 2018-06-01 as the start date, and then 30 days after that. Then we can add those to our snippet. We see that it works. Notice that there are quotes around the date, because if you don't include those quotes, or if you put the date in a different format, then you're probably not going to get the results that you expect. Now, on the last slide, let's go back real quick. We see, okay, it gives us 5,922, almost 6,000 actions between, June 1st, 2018 and 30 days after that. Now, if we are looking at this dashboard, we might not remember what, 5,922 actually refers to. So let's add in some more information. Let's just add in some text. And here I have it highlighted in bold, the changes that I'm making. If we add some text around our report results, this can help contextualize the numbers. So we had 5,922 actions. That's good, but when? When did we have those actions? And here we can, add some more text to say, maybe we want to even say when those were as well. So here I'm going to add another report to our dash. So here, this bolded section is another report to add to our dashboard. And just like the actions in interval report, this new users in interval report, that's only available in the client con instance, but I think it still illustrates, a good, how this works generally. If we were to use the required parameter tag, then we can prompt the user for one parameter and not the other. So this here will always assume that you want 30 days as your interval, because you'll notice here that it says 30 as days. It always says that. But it'll ask you when you'd like the start date to be. So what you can do is you can say, you can call this like your 30-day dashboard, and then you just specify the date. Starting at this date, tell me how many actions that we've had in a 30-day period. How many new users did we have in a period? And the only difference between this slide and the last one, highlighted in bold here, is saying, hey, this parameter start date is a date. So use the calendar as the way to input the date. And we can make those result numbers really pop by adding in some HTML that will set the font to be bold and to be larger. And if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause at any time and follow along so that you can see exactly what this is doing, how it all works. Don't be afraid to pause me. My feelings won't be hurt. And let's add in some additional context to the report that reminds us that it's pulling information for those 30 days after the date that we entered. Because before I was just saying, we had 6,000 actions. And that's fine, but 6,000 actions when? So here, now we're saying, and I've highlighted here in bold, in the 30 days after the start date that you specify, we had this many actions. We had this many new users. So go ahead and give that a try and see how that works for you. Next, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Like you do with templates, you can use Django built-in tags and filters and ActionKit custom tags and filters in order to modify results or control the display of the dashboard. For instance, we can check to see if this page type is a donation page and then display the result of the amount raised report if it is. Or if it's not a donation page, let's instead display the result of the page actions report. These aren't real reports, they're just for illustration, but I wanted to give you the idea that you can use really complex logic and code snippets here if that's something that you're comfortable with. You can also schedule your dashboards to run and email you the results to selected people. So for example, if you had a weekly report that runs every Sunday evening so that senior staff can review the past week's performance, first thing Monday morning, that's easy to do. Next, we're going to talk about how to customize the ActionKit admin. And I have to say this is my absolute favorite part of this training. And it's definitely the one that I get most excited about because it's a great way to put these things that we just learned in that last section into use in a very practical way that everyone who interacts with ActionKit will love. So let's take a look at what I mean. It's easy to overlook, but now you know behind the scenes what's going on. Parts of your ActionKit admin are controlled by dashboards, which means that you can edit these dashboards to control stats that show up on your home page and your Pages tab and your Mailings tab, and much more. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So on the left-hand side here, here's what the Your Progress dashboard looks like if you haven't customized it. It tells you how many mailable users you have, how many actions have ever been taken from the beginning of time, how much money you've ever raised ever, and then how many unsubscribes that you have. On the right-hand side, you can see that I've customized it to add a bunch of frequently used resources like documentation and references, so you can make this your own. I've also added in an at-a-glance look at all of the draft mailings that are sent to go out today. Or maybe I've got a count of all of the members who haven't yet received an email today. You have so many options. So if you have training resources or guides, helpful links that people often use, mailing calendars, those are great candidates to include in the Your Progress dashboard. I like to think about, if I'm giving a new staff user ActionKit login, what do I want them to see the very first thing when they log into ActionKit so that they will feel onboarded and comfortable with ActionKit so that they know how to use it? If I have staff who use ActionKit every single day, what do I want them to see the first thing when they log in, right? Think about those things. Put training resources, put onboarding resources, your style guide, things like that, things that are very useful that they need to look at every day. They probably have it bookmarked anyways. Put it right in ActionKit, right where they need it. That's the Your Progress dashboard. Let's take a look at the Page Mini Dash dashboard. This section that says 11 users took action, highlighted in red here, that's actually a dashboard behind the scenes, which means that you can edit this dashboard in order to customize the information that appears. Let's see how to do that. Here, I'm creating a new report called Count of New Users from Page. Don't worry about the SQL. It's not as important to copy it exactly as it appears. I just want to show you the process. So I create my report. I'm calling it Count New Users from Page. That's the short name. And then I'm going to add that new report into my Page Mini dashboard, and I'm going to save it. Next time I load my Pages tab, then I'll see that my mini dash now tells me how many new users that we had on that page as well. It's super cool. You can repeat the process for the Mailings tab as well. Maybe you could display how much money each mailing raised, for example. So right now, by default, it shows you the percent of people who opened and clicked your mailing. That's super useful. But you can also customize it in the same way to show how much money you got, or some other stat that would be really useful for you to see. Some other dashboards that I am really excited about are the draft mailing dashboard report. So if you have a report called draft dash, then it's going to be displayed on the draft mailing proof and send screen, and it's going to get the current mailing ID as a parameter. And I am really excited about the draft dash report. If you look at the notes for this video, there's a link in there to a blog post about how to customize the draft dash report and really make it your own. I think this is one of the best dashboards in ActionKit. When I was on the client side, I customized it extensively because I used it all the time as a way to help the people who are using the mailer tool every day, avoid common mistakes. Similarly, there's the sent mailing dashboard report. And if you name a report mailing _ dash, then it's going to be displayed on that sent mailing report screen. And again, getting that mailings ID. There's even more admin dashboards. So the user dashboard report, the user mini dash is just like the page mini dash and the mailing mini dash that we saw earlier. So it's displayed on the individual user record screen, and the user dash, you see all of that information about that user. So you can also control which dashboards will show up on your Reports tab and your Home tab if you add the homepage tag to your dashboard. These links I'll also put in the notes of this video. This is a link to all of the built-in reports and dashboards, and then also a way to preview some of the built-in dashboards. I think these are super valuable resources, especially as helpful starting points for you to brainstorm and figure out how to make your own dashboards. So I'm going to put all of these as links that you can click on from the notes of this video. So check that out as well. Next, we're going to cover how to create Google Charts in a dashboard, which when I was on the client side, I was actually really intimidated by, but in the process of preparing for this presentation, I was really floored by how straightforward it was and how quick and easy it was to create a Google chart that was interactive and looked really nice out of a report. So let's see how. So you can display your query report results as Google Charts, so you can see line charts and bar charts and other types of charts in your dashboard instead of just your data in a table format. You can also display those query report results as a Google table, which allows you to do things like sortable headers, things like that. And I'll show you what I mean in just a minute. So here's one example of a chart, a table data and then your chart down below. Up top you have a table with your list size, your number of mailings, total emails sent, advocacy actions, and so on. And down below we see a chart of the advocacy totals by month created by Google Charts, all right in our dashboard. One super common stumbling block for folks is that Google Charts is super strict about what it thinks of as a number. So if your number has commas in it, then Google Charts will not consider that to be a number, considers it to be text, and it won't include it in the chart. So if you're getting if you're getting errors like column number 0 cannot be a string, then make sure that your data is in number format. And you can double check this by making a chart type of table, sorting the column that you think is a number, because if it sorts in order of like 1, 10, 11, 2, 20, then it thinks it's text rather than number. So if that's all confusing, don't worry too much about it unless you get that error. But this is a common enough stumbling block that I wanted to mention it. So you can turn your report results into a chart in 3 easy steps. Number 1, we are going to wrap the report in an HTML div tag, like I have highlighted here in yellow. Next, we add a Google Chart class to that div tag, and so that's where it says class is equal to quotes Google-chart. And then the third step is to add a class for the type of chart that you want. So column chart or line chart or bar chart or table. In this example, I'm using column chart. So those 3 steps. If I were to look at the results of my report, top sources for a given page, without using the Google chart, this is what I would see if I just run this report. And the only thing that I'm changing between this and this is what's highlighted in yellow. The div and the classes for Google Chart and Column Chart. It's the exact same results, it's just formatted in a nice chart. It's so easy to put together. Now if we change this into a line chart, that's really easy. All we have to do is change the class of that div from column chart to line chart, as highlighted in yellow here. Similarly, if we want to change it into a bar chart, we just change the class, change it into bar chart right there. Or maybe we want an area chart. If we were to change this to table, that looks pretty similar to just getting the results without any special chart, except you can sort the data by clicking on the column headers. Like you can see here, I've sorted. So we have this basic chart here, and it looks fine, but it sure would be nice if we gave it a title and removed the legend, where it says count, because we don't really need that. Maybe we want to add labels to those axes as well, so we know that what we're looking at. This is how many actions, and this is the month. And while we're at it, let's change the color too. So earlier on, I said that you would be able to use JavaScript in order to make edits to your report. Here's where that becomes important. So to do all of those things that I said, changing all of these, different things, adding axes, labels, getting rid of the legend, we add an ID to the charts div. Here I'm calling it my chart. And then we write a little bit of JavaScript that says, hey, this chart reports.mychart. I want to set some options for it. want to add a title, advocacy totals by month. I want to add an axis label. So the title of this, the horizontal axis is month. I want to get rid of the legend. I want to change the color, and I want to make the height exactly 480 pixels tall. And so we can see all of our changes reflected here. Looks good. So here is a ton of documentation that I think you'll find super useful when you put together your Google Charts and tables. And again, I will put all of these links in the description of the video so that you can click them yourself. And a really great exercise would be to now create a dashboard report containing a Google chart. You can, if you came to ClientCon and you have a login, then you can make a column chart of the user count state report, but you can use any report that you would use or want to see information for. So this is the end of this video. Be sure to check the notes of the description of the video for all of the links, and I can't wait to see all of the different reports that you create. One more thing super quickly is, before we wrap, is here's an exercise with a hands-on blog post of how to customize your progress dashboard, and a hands-on blog post on how to customize the pre-flight dashboard that's just above the send button on your mailings, and of course how to get these slides as well. So thank you everyone.